Well, people are talking about another hour. Dave Petzo joining us from the Petzo Center, Petzo Financial. Petzo. So how you been, Dave Petzo?
I've been really well, yeah.
Been alive on social media and everything else and all these funny things going on?
Yeah.
Let me hit you with this. We've had this issue involving, and by the way, Pete and Matt, we'll get to you guys coming up in about 30 minutes. If you want to call back, that's great. And we appreciate you joining us here. Dave Petzo, the gun industry, they're under fire. They're under siege right now.
Yeah.
So if I'm Remington, if I'm one of these places that support the Second Amendment, support people to protect themselves, support others, how am I positioning myself right now?
It's interesting, and I think I hate to try to predict these types of things, but this has been coming for a long time, and now you're hearing it really from both sides. They're going to talk about this, about whether it's automatic or whatever it is. I think that there's going to be something there. So when you're thinking about it from a business perspective, if this particular company makes a lot of money, again, I'm not a gun guy, so I'm speaking out of ignorantly
You're
about
a business
this,
guy.
but business-wise, I think I
You're
would
the
be
most qualified person in the room to speak about this stuff.
Exactly.
So
I'm good with that. But I'm just saying I don't know on the automatic side, things like that. If that's a big part of their business is selling automatics, selling guns that will fire multiple rounds per second, that kind of thing, I think that's in trouble for future sales. There's no way to get the guns off the streets. But my feeling is if you're talking about a handgun for personal defense at home, things like that, I don't think it's under that much of a stress right now, and I would be less worried about a company that focused on that. I'd be very worried about companies that make all of their money on automatic weapons, or a lot of their money on automatic weapons.
Well, we'll have to see, but I mean, if you're marketing it, to me, I think you just keep your head down and roll on. I believe the media and the Democrats have an agenda to disarm America. And folks in America, we've seen the assault weapons ban hasn't worked. The bump stock ban hasn't worked. And we're going to see how this plays out. But I don't know if anybody's speaking for the gun owners right now, besides, the NRA or other folks.
Yeah, and I think they are, but I also hear, if you will, the tone has changed to say, look, we need to do more,
now,
and part of that I think is going to be on the automatic weapon side.
Now I'm biting my tongue here because I don't want to interrupt you, but
no, go ahead.
Has the tone really changed? I mean, let's face it here. We've got the media, we've got the Democrats that weren't talking about guns at all.
Right.
Now we're going to take your guns, we're going to keep you safe, we're going to wash your fanny, we're going to do all these wonderful things.
It has gotten ridiculous, you're right.
But haven't we seen this before? Now, to your point, the president endorsing red flag laws, background checks, couldn't we just see this all get mucked up in the September session of Congress?
We can, but I think you're hearing more from McConnell in the Senate. Says, well, we're going to bring up and talk about this, but they're going to do it in an intelligent way, Kevin. I'm just saying, I'm not saying that they're going to do anything, but I would be concerned on the automatic side, business-wise, if you are a gun manufacturer. If it's home defense, I agree with you. I don't think that there's anything there except the Democrats want to take everybody's guns away, and I don't think that plays well in flyover country.
We'll see whether or not the flyover country has enough votes to counteract the continued presence and influence of the coast. So we've got a couple big local stories going on. Number one, something that this program we're very proud of, brought it to the forefront. Doesn't take really, as you know, and I'm not speaking about you, sir. I'm talking about the ilk of the media. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to work in the media. It doesn't really, it's C- work, if you will.
You're right.
But we've been talking about this for quite some time. The rising home taxes.
Yeah.
That cough again. Your friends are going to be worried about you.
I hear you.
Hopefully you're okay. Anyway, sidebar aside, here we have people, now the statesman, covering an issue that we've been covering for months. Thankfully, they've picked up on this. You have retirees and others worried about losing their homes because of the excessive tax rate.
Yeah. I'm glad it's hitting some press. It's other than you and I talking about this. It's something that is, I believe, is a monster problem long term for the average person to be able to afford to live here. We don't talk about the fact, everybody, housing prices are so high. Okay, that's fine. And interest rates are so low, it makes it more affordable. But what isn't going down, isn't holding its own, are taxes. And tax rates have gone through the roof. And there is no end in sight because we have to put up a library. We need a new baseball stadium. And all these things cost a tremendous amount of money.
That's your boy in Boise. That's not the rest of the peeps.
Yeah, but every city around has raised their taxes terribly.
Sure.
I hear a lot from people in Nampa talking about it. Everybody talks about Boise. Nampa's gotten out of control, too.
Now, what do you mean Nampa's gotten out of control?
Tax-wise. Their taxes have gone through the roof.
Well, Canyon County doesn't have the industrial base that Ada County does.
Correct.
So residents in Canyon County do have to pay more, and whether we're talking about Nampa or Middleton or Caldwell or what have you. But back to this point, what do we elect government to do? Okay, we hear that this legislative session, not to get too wonky, because I can't even spell wonky. Is it with a Y or an IE? Anyway, they've got this thing where to pay for Medicaid expansion, they're looking at making the counties pay for it.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, if there was no plan to pay for it, like you bought a building several years ago.
Right.
You had a plan to pay for it.
Right.
The Petso Center.
Right.
So if there's no plan to pay for it, why did the representatives and the senators approve it? Well, the voters did it. As we know, and going back to Idaho history far before I got here, there was a thing called term limits. And the legislature said, we don't care whether it passed or not. We're not going to enforce it. They could do that.
Right.
Now, they could have done the same thing with Medicaid expansion. We don't have the ability to pay for it. Now, all this money is coming in. People are being taxed out of their homes. You're the czar of finance. Well, right now you are. What's going on?
Yeah, you hit on it earlier when you said, what do we elect government to do?
Right.
And the reality is we seem to elect government to spend money. To spend money and spend future money, raise taxes and raise revenues and spend it. They don't fix problems typically. And that's one of the concerns that I always have with any government is it just keeps on increasing rather than becoming more effective. It becomes less effective, but it doesn't matter. They just scream because it's less effective. They scream for more money. I think that's a fundamental problem of any government. And so asking a government to suddenly behave properly is back to the taxpayer base. Kevin, we have to be responsible.
But is it up to, and by the way, you're listening to KIDO Talk Radio, Dave Petzo, Kevin Miller, is it up to the free market or government to solve the housing situation? This week, Dr. Ben Carson is coming to town.
Yep.
We love Dr. Carson. He's a great young man. Senator Crapo, a vibrant, dynamic young man as well. They're going to be meeting about the housing situation. They're going to Caldwell where they're building homes out of shipping containers. Look, is it up to the government? Is it up to private enterprise to figure this out? Because everybody's coming in like the old days with the gold in Idaho. Maybe you did that back when you were a kid, panhandled the gold or whatever, but they're speculating on this real estate market because people can't afford to live here.
Right. They can't.
And Brother Petzo, let's go back 9 years ago when we were talking about cul-de-sacs being empty.
Yep.
And homes valued in Canyon County, the median price now is over $250,000. The median price was $140,000, dropping to $70,000.
Yep.
Ada County, it went from I don't know, maybe 125, something like that. And now you're a market guy, and I know this is a convoluted point. You're going, look, dude, this isn't O'Reilly. Just get to the question. What is going on here with the uber inflation of home prices? When you take a look at this, you're a market guy. It's exploding.
Yeah.
So is it government or private enterprise
that's making it explode
that should solve the problem, or you just let laissez-faire, the buyer beware?
Well, there isn't going to be a resolution that's an easy resolution of any kind, whether it's private or whether it's government, because we're really dealing with the circumstance of a first world problem. People want to live here. That makes inflation in housing inevitable. There's not a house you can put everywhere. So we're very fortunate in this area to have so much land. And I think we're going to go out south of here and keep going south. I understand that there's fundamental problems, thanks to a listener that was able to tell me that out this way. Why don't they build out that way? And why do
Towards Mountain Home?
Towards Mountain Home and towards south, dead south, but out by the prison. Why not go out that direction? And the answer is it's much more difficult to build out there because of the lava flows.
Who doesn't want the prisoners as neighbors?
Well, I'm not saying you have to be right next to the prison. But, Kevin, it is a first world problem. People want to live here. There isn't an easy solution at all. In fact, I don't think there is a solution that doesn't involve some form of government, but at the same time, as soon as you do, because who wants to pay for low-income housing? And in the past, we've tried various programs. They do low-income housing where private comes in and they get tax breaks to do it. That seemed to be, excuse me. Yeah,
you want a sip of coffee here? It's okay if you
got some water here. I'm okay.
All right.
That seemed to be very effective where private was operating it and they got some tax credits to do it. But that bill died its death, and it went away. So I don't have an answer, Kevin, as to whether the government should be involved. It frightens me when they are, because those things are terrible. We know what the projects look like.
Well, then why do we have Dr. Carson and Senator Crapo coming to town if the government really can't do anything?
Good question. They can do something. They can certainly come in with tax credits. They can certainly give, if you will, economic assistance rather than their own bureaucratic assistance.
Now, this is, again, by the way, a touchy subject here, talking housing here on KIDO Talk Radio, but you take a look at the rise of all the apartments. And there are some that have low-income apartments, and those, you work hard, you're a nice person, you deserve a good place to live. On the other hand, you have the density increasing here, the infrastructure not being able to handle it. I mean, The other day, you just drive around. I know you don't go past Boise, past the gates of Boise, but you go into Meridian or Nampa or what have you, and you see these 5-6 story apartment complexes being built.
Absolutely,
massive.
I know, and you're right. The density is a huge problem. I mean, we can't have a stoplight every apartment building, but we're going to end up doing that, right? Because of that incredible density. So, I agree with you. We are getting to have that kind of density that you see in California more. Is happening here, and you see it in Denver.
Build the wall.
Build the wall. I know.
A lot of people laughed at me when I talked about building the wall.
I know.
They're not laughing now.
They're not laughing now. We want that wall. No more Californians.
More. Just kidding, everybody. More coming up next. Dave Petzo, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Dave Petzo joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. So some of the big business news. Bernie Sanders is talking about getting rid of student loan debts and burdens and everything else. How about this one? Chase Bank forgives all credit card debt for Canadian customers.
Huh?
Yeah.
For Canadian customers.
Yep. Erases all credit card debt for Canadian customers. Holy slate, Batman. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. Okay, I wish I was born in Canada. Does it mean I go out and charge it up and then I go, oops, forgive that? And they go, yeah, well, you're a Canadian. We love you. So
apparently they're getting out of the Canadian market. So this is their last chance to set you to get something on your credit card, and they're going to forgive all the debt, apparently.
Crazy. I don't understand that at all. Why would they be getting out? All right. Well, that's the rest of the story we'll have to dive into. I haven't heard of such a thing.
Here it is. Chase made the decision to exit the Canadian credit card market. Maria Martinez, she's the vice president of communication for Chase Card Services. Quote, as part of that exit, all credit card accounts were closed on or before March 2018. A further business decision has been made to forgive all outstanding balances in order to complete the exit.
All right. So it's too late to rack up those credit cards. They're out. But they're just leaving the rest of the balance.
They're piecing out. I guess Canada is not a good investment.
I guess. Well, that's really crazy, though. That's that is another one. That's like a broken glass theory, right? You keep letting the little things go. If somebody doesn't pay off their bills, why would they pay it off next time? Right.
Good thoughts. Good thoughts indeed. Couple other headlines here with Dave Petzo. Goldman Sachs economists say fears rise that U.S.-China trade war leading to a recession. What's going on with the Chinese? You're down with the Chinese.
Yeah, I'll tell you. It's this is the trade war recession part 23. I think Goldman Sachs has called for it 3 times, and J.P. Morgan's called for it at least 3 times, and so on and so on. They just continue to call for a recession, or the Trump tax cuts were sugar high. All of these things are I don't know why. Why don't we just look at the data? Yes, of course it can lead to a recession if it turns out to be an all-out war. It doesn't make you right. It makes you obvious. If things turn, take a more vicious turn and turn into a currency war or something like that, then we have bigger issues. My concern with the Chinese right now, actually, is what's going on in Hong Kong. I'm very concerned about that. That they come rolling in there, the freedom that is, and come rolling into Hong Kong. It would be, I think, very, very damaging to the markets and is much more probable than I think it was a month ago.
Well, it would be damaging to the Hong Kongians.
It would, and also, though, the economic world. It's a bastion of freedom in a land of non-free. So I think that their objective is to crush it in the long run, but at the same time, it's certainly is a source of capital and a source of business for the mainland. So I think that they're running a tightrope here, trying to clamp down on Hong Kong. But I'm concerned it could erupt into a Tiananmen Square type of thing.
All right, Dave Petzo joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. What is a trade war?
What is a trade war? Good question. I think that we're not having a trade war right now. We're having a spat. A war, I guess if you want to try to define it, make up your own terms, but would be all-out tariffs, or we will not trade. We will not buy anything from you. And so that would be, of course, devastating to both countries and trade all over the globe. The economy of the globe would be in trouble because of all the supply chains that go around. But what is a trade war and a currency war is even more interesting, because a currency war is where we devalue a currency to try to make our goods and services cheaper. And that makes yours more expensive. So you can see the currency manipulation in China. They've admitted they did it, and they came right off of it. As Trump said, enough is enough, and they did stop. But we're sitting around wondering if that's going to be a weapon that they try to use. I think it'd be very dangerous for the Chinese and could spark unbelievable, out-of-control inflation. So I don't think they're going to try it. But if they do, that could be the next level in this trade war.
Dave Petzo joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio. Traffic and weather together. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. And more with Dave Petzo here, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Anything that we should be looking out for?
Well, I think that what's going on in Hong Kong is a problem. And everything is about the trade now with China, even though it's gone on for a very long time. Where the stakes are now beginning to get amped up to the point that that's what people are going to be focused on right now. And we are, as you always point out, Kevin, in the doldrums of summer, which means markets can be moved pretty quickly and easily, as many people are still on the beach.
Still on the beach, but business continues. The rise of electric cars. Mm-hmm. You've got BMW and other people getting into those now, as Volvo as well, following the Tesla model. Do you think that will continue to grow? And then when we hear the issue with electric cars is, again, the lack of infrastructure, and they cost so much because the batteries to create them aren't so environmentally friendly. That doesn't get a lot of coverage.
Kevin, I'm glad you brought that up. It is to me, it's one of those things that we are all of us would like to have greener, whatever, right? Cleaner this, cleaner that. And that's all great and groovy, but we have got to not be thinking about this just from a standpoint of it makes me feel so good because I have an electric car, but I've got a battery that needs to be disposed of, or it takes 500,000 tons of ore to make one battery, which is actually what it does. I mean, it's unbelievably hard to make these batteries, and we've got to figure out a different way, and technology will. But we've got to slow down and say this is a massive problem, because you're right, Kevin. This is not environmentally friendly at all. People think it is. Well, that's great. Pat yourself on the back. You drive an electric car. That's great. But to me, it's not the infrastructure at all that is a problem. It is actually what are we going to do with these batteries? How are we going to make them, number one, without destroying the planet? Number two, how are we going to dispose of them without destroying the planet? It's both, and it is absolutely terrible. It's the same thing we did with ethanol and corn. It takes more carbon to make ethanol than it saves. Well, that's just stupid. That is just beyond stupid. But we all feel good about it because we're driving on corn. It's just dumb, and it doesn't work. And we got to think these things through. And that is only one example of all of the issues. Solar panels are another. They're going to wear out, and we're using so much of our resources to make them. We've got to think these things through, and we're not so far.
Dave Petzo joining us. Final thought as we take a look at the costs of the Green New Deal. Democrats saying that if they get elected, the Trump tax cuts are over. What would that do if the Democrats get elected from a nonpartisan approach based on what you've heard of their fiscal policies? How it's different from the president's? What would that mean to the markets? What would that mean to the economy?
Kevin, this is one that, you have to adjust over time. And I've always told people, okay, Obama got elected, leave it alone. Don't get out of the market. He's not going to, politics doesn't matter that much. This one does. I really think it does. It matters a lot if we're talking about the economics of socialism versus Trump and what's going on right now. I can't be positive on business, the markets. I think people, if Trump starts to lose in the polls, I think you'll see the market crater, and I don't think it'll come back if he is not elected. So I think that it's not going to wait until election night unless it's a surprise like it was last time. But if he's losing in the polls, I think you're going to see, depending on who it is, right? If it's a more balanced Democrat, if there is such a thing these days, if it's not a whack job socialist, then I think that you could find that the market would ignore it. So I don't want to just lay it out that way, but Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or some of these socialists that are out there, they don't have good economic ideas. They're stupid. And all of history says this is just rock stupid. But we're going to try it again because we're smarter, we're better, we're kinder, we're nicer, and it'll work on the 253rd try of socialism. It won't, and that's going to just devastate our businesses and our economies. So I can't be positive if that is the case. I think this is a very important election.
Dave Petzo joining us. Catch him Saturdays 8 to 10 anytime at the Petzo Center. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. Rolling on the right side, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. The president talking about the race card recently.
For them to throw out the race word again, racist, 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 that's all they use to anybody. They call Nancy Pelosi a racist. She's not a racist. They call anybody a racist when they run out of cards.
There we have it. Have we all run out of cards? We'll get to that in a minute, plus more of your thoughts on the red flag laws. KIDO Talk Radio, KIDO Talk Radio, the app, is your home for Fox News on the radio. Take us anywhere, anytime, day or night. Joining us now, Tanya J. Powers, Fox News Radio. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
So, doesn't look good for Epstein.
Well, no. The investigation is underway as to what happened during that time in his Manhattan jail cell. I mean, how was he left alone for that long of a period of time? We have at Fox News have now learned that they are saying that he was left alone for hours. He was not checked on. He was physically supposed to be checked on every 30 minutes, according to normal operations at the Metropolitan Correctional Center. But he wasn't checked on for hours leading up to his death. There apparently, he didn't have a cellmate either the night of his death, which is also unusual from what we understand.
Well, and the timing of his demise, many people are wondering, whether or not he was killed. The videotape, apparently there is video of the outside, but not the inside of his cell. The release of apparently sealed documents. We have allegations that a lot of more major people will be named in the Epstein web, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of questions, obviously, to be answered still. I mean, not just how he died and the situation that led up to that and, all of that. But like you mentioned, the documents that were released on Friday and the other people who were kind of in his orbit who are, not formally accused, but mentioned in those documents of facilitating some of these acts that he was accused of and was that's why he was in jail in the first place. So he was waiting trial on sex trafficking conspiracy charges.
Yeah, you're talking about Bill Richardson, George Mitchell, other folks that have been named in this. We'll continue to know about this. The reaction from the Attorney General was quite stern.
Yeah, I mean, he says that the FBI, as well as the Department of Justice Inspector General, are investigating this, which is kind of an odd move. I mean, again, this is a really very well-connected and high-profile person who died in federal custody. The federal, prison system has had a couple of things, but including this, go not so well for them in the last year. I mean, last year, Whitey Bulger, the Boston gangster, was beaten to death in federal custody. So there's a lot of questions about, that as well, like, how did these things keep happening? But also, if there was anybody else that will be pursued for charges related to any of this.
Right. Again, we talked a little bit about that earlier, the Whitey Bulger thing, where he was just in general population, and Whitey Bulger, a notorious gangster, had been caught after, 20, 30 years on the lam? And
yeah, that was a long time.
Yeah. Finally, sometimes I just kind of like to, and you're like, dude, I don't need the added stress. I like to just kind of throw things at you and see how you react.
Of course.
So I apologize for the poor intro, but let me just hit you with this one. I said this to John Decker the other day, and he was so in the zone because he had gotten 3 questions with the president. And I said, John, aren't you envious of Jared Halpern at the Iowa State Fair? I just asked the question, but I mean, that's probably kind of cool. You go eat pork chops, Snickers, fried Snickers, and you get to watch all these 2020 presidential candidates. I think Jared had the gig of the week last week. Your thoughts?
I think he absolutely did. As a matter of fact, I would love to. I've been wanting to go to cover that for years. And when I found out he was getting to go, I'm like, I sent him an email. I'm like, I'm so jealous. I have so much fun, and I can't wait to hear your reports because I knew he would do a great job. But yeah, I was like, man, send me pictures of the butter cow.
Exactly. Now, I like I said, those are, and that's for the true political insiders. Where you go, and then you talk to a Tim Ryan, and he says, "Look, I'd rather have a beer than water," and it got no response. But it's fascinating. If every state could be like that, I think we'd have a better republic. Your thoughts?
I think it'd be great. To have stuff like that. It's kind of sort of unfair that you have a handful of states that really are the ones who get all of the traffic. They are the ones who get all of the candidates, coming through there in an early way. Iowa, of course, New Hampshire. I mean, they start going there 2 years out. And that's great for folks in those 2 locations. But you have, South Carolina is obviously another big state. But I mean, even when you look at the caucus in Iowa as well as the primary in New Hampshire, and South Carolina, and then you have Super Tuesday, which comes really quickly on the heels of a lot of that this year. I mean, a lot of votes will be cast, by a ton of states before we're even, a month and a half into next year.
Sure.
So, it would be kind of more fun if more of the states could, kind of have that sort of experience.
Having gotten my start in New Hampshire, I know all about that. So,
oh yeah, I'm sure you do.
Yeah, that was good times. As always, Tanya J. Powers, we appreciate you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Liberal Steve says hello.
Oh, hey, Liberal Steve.
Take care. Thank you, ma'am. Bye. There we have it. Tanya J. Powers joining us. Okay, let's get back on track. 580-5436. 580-KIDO. The Democrats say they want gun reform. The president says, maybe, but don't they just want to take your guns?
Democrats and Republicans in Congress could all agree with the overwhelming majority of Americans that want tougher gun laws.
I think we can have some really meaningful background checks. We don't want people that are mentally ill, people that are sick. We don't want them having guns.
I watched what happened when those kids from Parkland came up to see me when I was vice president. They went under and some of you covered it. And you watched what happened when they went up on the halls of Congress.
Yeah, I don't think that they did that. Another Biden gaffe. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So we will get back to the red flag laws. And in addition to that, what we talked about earlier with Dave Petzo, are people getting taxed out of their homes, particularly here in the Treasure Valley with all the growth? Should government seek a solution to that? We'll get your thoughts on that. Back to this Epstein case, though. Here you have this guy, Jeffrey Epstein, who'd gotten away with being a pedophile, gotten away with sex trafficking, gotten away with everything. And then, boom, he gets caught. And then finally, you take a look at things and people say that he committed suicide. Well, you have Donald Trump, the president, retweeting other things saying that if you're friends of Bill Clinton, and those of you that go back a ways, you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot. You don't have to be a fan of Dinesh D'Souza to understand that people that have been around with the Clintons and all of a sudden the Clintons dispose of them, well, they leave. They leave this earth. So Epstein, not checked on for hours, no video of it, and he committed suicide after he tried to commit suicide before. The deep state strikes again.
There are a lot of unanswered questions surrounding Jeffrey Epstein's death. Officials do call it an apparent suicide, but many are asking how that could happen while Epstein was in federal custody. There are reports guards assigned to Epstein's jail unit were working maximum overtime shifts due to a staffing shortage. Now, he died at the age of 66 on Saturday. The millionaire financier was well known for his connections to the rich and famous. However, prosecutors allege Epstein had a dark side. He was accused of sex trafficking young girls for years. Back on July 6th, he was arrested in New Jersey. Days later, he pled not guilty to charges of conspiracy and sex trafficking.
And there we have it. There we have it, my friends. Epstein dead. How does that happen in federal custody? How does Whitey Bulger get killed in federal custody? We're all responsible. We're responsible for producing at work. We're responsible for keeping our family safe. How does this high-profile man all of a sudden end up dead? To me, I think they got him. Who? The deep state. He crossed a line. He made notes. It was well documented. Court documents now becoming unsealed. And when you become a problem to the deep state, well, the deep state takes care of its own. We'll hear what you have to say next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Don't forget Glenn Beck today following this program at 9. Chandler in Boise. Good morning, Chandler.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Thanks for having me on. One of the things that next time someone says to you, well, why do you need these guns? Why do you need these weapons? It really aggravates me how everyone talks about, well, the rural areas this, the rural areas that. The urban areas is actually where you need guns, and I'll give you a reason why. In Los Angeles County, by LAPD figures, you have a standing gang army of at least 100,000 people at any given moment. And so what kind of weapons do those guys have? The Shoreline Crips, the Banana Killer Bloods, MS-13. These guys are loaded to the teeth with guns. And maybe the odds are that you'll never run into them. Maybe the odds are that, you won't need something. But what if you do? What if your car breaks down? What if you're that guy working for Frito-Lay that's got to go on your route and drop off things? If you could take away the guns and disarm this 100,000 gang army in Los Angeles County, prove to me that the gun control can work and that I don't need my guns. But until they do that, please shut the hell up.
Oh, that's a good point. And you don't see any of the libs talking about taking away the gangbangers, do you?
Never. No, never. They can't. I mean, another story. My brother, I think I might have said before, he works in a industry in Chicago, and it's a $1 billion one. They're industry leader. It's not a very nice neighborhood. He's got to travel armed to work, and he's in gang-connected territory. So guess who they got to hire, and guess who works at their company? And, he's part of that territory, so he's okay when he's in that territory. But when he leaves that territory or he's somewhere else, wow, he's got to watch his back. I mean, isn't that not an example of how they've given up on fighting the criminals, and they're only going after us? Thanks.
Thank you, Chandler. They are going after us. And speaking of going after, we're joined by the GemStatePatriot.com, the mayor of New Meadows, Idaho, the sweet prince of the Treasure Valley. I could go on and on. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Miller. Thanks for some of the very interesting topics you have for discussion this morning. Let's start off with Epstein, who, in my opinion, doesn't deserve the press everyone is giving his death. He was a bad guy who had too much dirt on too many people, very important people, and that simple threat of him spilling the beans put his life in jeopardy, so I'm not surprised that he's gone. And as I have said on the red flag laws, they're only going to cloud issues of firearms at the state level and will become very onerous to enforce because you're going to have people in the gun-grabbing states using the red flag laws very liberally, and those in the Second Amendment protection states who are not going to implement most of them at all if it's given to the states. So the only thing you have accomplished is to give liberal-leaning state legislatures more opportunity to get guns from anyone who deemed potentially dangerous. And I would not be surprised if you see an exodus from those states by gun owners who feel that their gun rights might be infringed upon.
Right, but if the feds come in, there are going to be no state gun rights.
If the feds come in, I certainly hope that doesn't happen. I think there's a lot of rhetoric going on right now. I still believe that the Second Amendment is going to be enforced in terms of the constitutionality. And I don't see the people putting up with all of this baloney that's going on with Lindsey Graham and Trump and whoever they think they might be. I think they're trying to placate to the liberals and try to give them something, but what they want, I don't think they're going to get. I just don't see it all happening. You had a very interesting conversation with Dave Pesto talking about the state, how they're going to pay for Medicaid expansion, which is exactly what I've been talking about for 3 or 4 years. You can't implement a program of this type without severe restrictions. And as I have said, they're going to drive our state into debt. And the problem is going to expand over the next 4 to 5 years. As long as they continue to implement this program, it's going to grow exponentially. They're going to raise taxes for everyone. The program is going to do nothing to improve health.
Well, and we were talking about that earlier for people that are just tuning in. There's, and this is something that you, Steve Ackerman, started. We picked up on it, myself and Dave Pesto, that, people are being taxed out of their homes, number one, but number two, specifically, this issue involving Medicaid expansion. You have this legislative committee going, well, we're going to let the counties pay for it. Well, if we couldn't pay for it, then we should have not passed it in the legislature. Well, they had a referendum. We've had referendums before that have been ignored by the state legislature.
Well, this is very typical of the legislature we have because we have so many cronies involved. But if the state can't pay for it, how the heck are the counties going to pay for it?
Crony.
Well, of course, it's going to be, the counties that have the high populations. You're talking about the Treasure Valley again. It all comes down to the simple fact that there's not enough money to pay for these programs. What's going to happen when Micron continues to downsize and you see a reduction in the tax base in the Treasure Valley? You're going to have more taxes that are going to be imposed on those who live there. And as far as this housing market, much of it has peaked in Idaho as housing prices are 25% higher than they are in most of the rest of the country. And building and labor costs for housing is still rising. They've priced about 80% of the people out of the market totally. You have a demographic situation that most people don't think about, is you have a lot of elderly looking to sell their homes and downsize, but there are not enough younger buyers with the income levels to purchase these homes. So you're going to, at some time in the future, have a real housing glut at the higher end of the market, but you're also going to see the same thing at the lower end, as many of the elderly in smaller houses on fixed incomes can't afford the taxes. I mean, these guys know how to create a lot of problems, but they sure as hell don't know how to solve them.
Well, we love you, and I'm glad everything is wonderful in New Meadows, where nothing bad ever happens.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but it's a great place to be.
God bless you.
I miss you, Kevin. Let's get that Saturday morning show started again. We could have some real fun.
You could drive down, couldn't you?
I will drive down today.
I'll see you.
Take care, my friends.
All right. Coming up, Pete and Mountain Home. First, traffic and weather together. Good morning, Dave. Let's get Pete and Mountain Home in. Pete, good morning.
Morning, Kevin. Red flag laws. I have a way that I would accept a red flag law, even though it's a violation of due process. But let's do this. The person that accuses you, the chief of police or the sheriff that sends the police out to collect the laws, and the judge that signs the order, all three of those people who did not recognize your due process rights under the Fifth Amendment will be personally and individually liable for any damage to your reputation, to your firearms collection. They will be charged $5 million each that they have to pay to you for violation of your rights. They have to pay your lawyer fees, and they have to do all that unless, after providing you with a chance, the hearing and everything, that you actually get to face your accuser, unless you're committed to a mental institution, which indicates that you are, in fact, a danger to yourself and society. If that doesn't happen, then all those people are liable for all those costs plus $5 million penalty each. Does that seem fair? You think that might put a little brake on it? Because like right now they can do that and there's no big deal for them.
Let's go after the gangbangers and those guys, Pete. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fox News next. Good morning.